Hi everyone, it's Amanda. Today I'm going to be doing a recent reads. Once again, so excited. I have some favorite books on this list. I have bubble tea coming, so I'm ready to eat some lunch, chat with y'all about some really fucking good books, romance books that have blew my mind, and let's just get right into it. But before we do, be sure to like and subscribe down below for more bookish content from me. I'd love to have you here. Let's start with one of my favorites, Book of Night by Holly Black. This is her debut into the adult fantasy world, and let me tell you, this was everything. I can't stop thinking about this book. I read it in the beginning of the month and it blew my mind. It has mystery and it has romance and intrigue, and if you like Six of Crows but more gritty and just more secretive, you need to read this book. To summarize this book that I couldn't possibly do any justice, we've Charlie Hall. She is our main character. She's a notorious thief and she's always been good at making bad decisions, and one day she gets caught up again in this web of mystery and lies. She's worked for Glomist in the past. Those are the magicians of this world. The world follows shadow magic, where your shadow can become living, and it is so good, so haunting. I truly think this is one of my favorite worlds that's ever been built. Where was I going with this? Oh yes, so she has a boyfriend and he is shadowless, which means people don't like him. You know, he doesn't have a shadow, so he's kind of empty inside, and people don't like that. It's like, where'd your shadow go? Who took it? And I'm just gonna leave it at that, because if I go into other things, it's basically just telling you the book that you're gonna be reading. It was a 5-star for me. I thought the mystery and the twists and everything about this was gorgeous, dark, and gritty. You gotta read it. Next we have Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did by Monica Murphy. This is a bully romance book that is filled to the brim with hot smut, and it was fantastic. If you're looking for a bully romance, look no further. This has everything you could possibly want out of a bully romance. So we're following a girl. She gets intertangled with this rich family that basically owns this prep school, and the reason she's intertangled with him is actually because when she was at a party when she was like 14, her mom was having an affair with his dad, and so begins their rivalry. And he calls her a whore, all these horrible things. You know, your mom's a whore, you're a whore, everyone's a hoe. And she eventually meets him again in high school when she's sent to this prep school, and they do not like each other. He especially hates her because her mom basically ruined his life, splitting up his parents, because now they're divorced because of the affair. And it is so juicy. The reason it's called this is because she has a journal that she keeps of all the memories, like, you know how we used to keep journals, or still do, and it's full of all her secrets, how she feels, how she's been feeling, what her life was like, and it's full of a secret that she doesn't want anyone to know. And it really gets kind of dark. It has some sexual assault involved, just as a trigger warning, and she just doesn't want him to have this journal, but he ends up taking it. Glorious. I really like their love story. I gave this 4.5 stars. Next we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is a new release and I thought it was really good. It's a 4-star from me. It's an I want you but I can't have you type romance. They come from completely different sides of life. He is in a small town with small town vibes. You know, he struggles with his money a little bit more, and she is a notorious ER doctor, and one day she's driving and she accidentally hits a raccoon, or I think it was a raccoon, and her car is kind of fucked on the side of the road, and she ends up in this town that this man lives in, and he helps her, tows her car, and she ends up in this town with him for a night. They have a one-night stand, and it just becomes more than that over time. It's a reverse age gap, which I usually don't like, but I really love this one. He has a baby goat that he takes care of. I really liked how this one touched on fighting for your own happiness and not necessarily doing what your parents want you to do. This one had a lot of deeper messages in it though. She's dealing with a breakup. She had a really emotionally abusive man in her life before this, and her dad still wants him to be in her life. And so that's kind of one of the struggles with this, is that she's coming to terms with the fact that she was emotionally abused, and he's a notorious surgeon, so everybody thinks they should be together. and she's just having a hard time dealing with those memories and dealing with the fact that she put up with that for so long. And then she sees Daniel and he's just so kind and good and it's everything that she wants, and she can't have him because of what other people will think in her town. It didn't feel like one of those miscommunication tropes because it was so real. It was something that I could imagine in real life happening, because parents can be extremely harsh on their children and think that their life is made for them. You can't take ownership of everything that I've done once I became 18. You know what I mean? And she has to make some hard decisions for herself, and I thought it was a beautiful story about coming to terms with who you want to be instead of people pleasing, because she is such a people pleaser, and I just loved her character. So definitely recommend this if you wanted a rom-com with a deeper message. Also, it had some hilarious moments where I was cracking up. The dick pic scene, I was crying laughing at that. If you've read this book, you know that part too good. And there were other parts that I just laughed out loud at too. I was on an airplane while reading this for some of it, and I was like, sorry guys, I know I'm giggling over here, but it is funny. Next, we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I did vlog this one, so I'll link that up above if you haven't checked it out yet. I was on vacation when I read this, and I really liked it. I didn't love Nora's character at first. I thought the heartless, quirky vibe wasn't entirely my thing, but she did grow a lot over the course of the story. So in this one, we followed Charlie and Nora. Nora is a notorious shark of the publishing industry. She's known to be heartless, you know, not have money feelings, whatever. And then Charlie, he is an editor and he's also pretty well known in the industry. They end up having a meeting about this new book that this author has, and he ends up fighting with Nora about how this author's previous book wasn't that good because it was set in this town that he hates, Sunshine Falls. So that's their first meetup, and then Nora's sister Libby proposes the idea of having a sister trip before she has her second child, because she just wants a break and she also feels like she's not as close to her sister as she wants to be. So Nora agrees because she loves her sister and she has been feeling the same way, that they haven't been as connected as they once were. So they end up going to where? Sunshine Falls. And here is where the story lies, because when they get there, guess who's there? Charlie. Charlie's there, and why? Why is he there? And then we have a love story between them, and it's really cute. I did like their love story. I just didn't love Nora, and this book does have a heavy sister plot, very focused on the family aspects, so beware of that if you don't like that in your romances, because it is, I think, half the story. Then I did read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas for me and Jess's ACMAF read-along. So next month we're reading ACA War. If you want to join, Discord always linked below. I read this chunky ass book and I rated it 3.5 stars, which is why I rated the first one too. Let me explain myself, because I did love the last half of the book. But not even the last half, it was like the last 30%, which is when the steam comes in and it also gets really action-packed. I felt like the first part of this book was just so boring. I did not get the hype. I just did not get it. The first half, I was literally falling asleep. I didn't even want to read. It was putting me in a slump. I didn't even want to pick up any book. I was just like, I'll try this. Picked it up for like a second, maybe like 3 pages, and I was like, oh, I don't want to read anymore. So that's not very good, but the end of this book picked up a lot, and I did really love the ending and the scenes and the whole twisty thing and the re-sand. We did stand, but the only good scene in the beginning was when she was in that tea shop or whatever, and she has to climb that chimney. That was the only scene where I was like kind of on the edge of my seat, but otherwise I was just like, okay. But I really think the next one will be my favorite in the series, because I really feel like I like these characters now and I'm kind of sold on the story. Like after the last half of that book, I truly believe the rest of the series is gonna blow my socks off, because I feel like I know these characters like the inner circle. I care a little bit now, whereas I didn't really care in the beginning. So that's my verdict on that. And the theme was pretty good, you know what, but I liked chapter 44 the best, even better than chapter 55. It might have been 43. Whenever they had their first moments in the one bed trope, I really liked that. I thought that was even more impactful than chapter 55. Then I read these 3 books that I also read in a vlog that I'll link up above, Kindle Unlimited readathon vlog, but these were so good. I loved all these books. But let's start off with my favorite, that might be my favorite of the year so far, and that's June 1st by Jennifer Hartmann. This book made me sob for 20 to 30 minutes. Literally, I had footage of me sobbing for 20 to 30 minutes. It's foster brother, always been you trope, forbidden romance, and it is beautiful. This book does have a lot of triggers, so beware of that. They are kind of spoilery, so I won't name them here, but if you have triggers, I definitely look at the list before going into this. I will go over one of them though, because that is the beginning of the book. So in the beginning, we have Brant. He is age 6, and he has an abusive father that abuses his mom. His mom is going to get them out of the situation. She promises that she will always protect him and that they're going to get out of this house. But she's a little too late, and his dad murders her and then kills himself and leaves this 6-year-old boy behind to witness this. He ends up going to live at his next door neighbor and best friend's house, who happened to have a baby girl on the same day of his tragedy. He had wished for a baby sister the same day that his mom died, and he feels that he's to blame for everything that has happened. And so that is hard, and everything is so painful in this book. They grow up together. You get to see his utter devotion to her. Her name is June. The title really does mean something, and you get to find that out in the beginning-ish of the book. And it is just such a beautiful, beautiful book about love and friendship and found family. I loved this book. It is my favorite book that I've ever read with the taboo / forbidden kind of trope, and I highly recommend this book. I couldn't love it anymore. I truly think this is one of the best love stories that I've ever read. I was in love with this book. The writing style is gorgeous. It goes back and forth between June and Brant, and it also has some other perspectives in this book. We follow them throughout their whole lives, so you really get to fall in love with these characters, which is why what happens becomes so painful to you, because you have loved Brant since page 1. And I don't know how Jennifer Hartmann does it. I don't know how she gets you to connect to the characters so quickly. And it is addicting because I love when books can make me feel something. And with that being said, I'll read you this line. They say tragedy comes in 3s. For me, that was true. The first one changed me, the second one broke me, and the third one healed me. But at the center of all that tragedy, there's a love story, and at the center of that love story, there's June. I could literally cry right now just with that line right there. At the center of it, there's June. We're not crying anymore, okay? I already cried enough in the last video that I made. On a more smutty note, we have Praise by Cate. Love this freaking book. I will be reading every single book that comes out in this series. It was so freaking good, and I don't even like age gap that much. This is an age gap ex-boyfriend's dad forbidden trope, and it was glorious, smut-filled goodness. It was everything that you want out of a book with a man on the cover. So in this one we follow Emerson and Charlie. Charlie is dating Emerson's son when she suddenly breaks it off because he's not a really good guy to her, and she's pretty much done with this bullshit. And in the beginning of the book, she wants her security deposit back because they moved out of their place. And it turns out that it got sent to his dad, who he doesn't talk to. So he tells her, you go get it because I'm not talking to him. So she's like, all right, whatever. So she goes to this guy's mansion. And keep in mind that they have struggled to pay their rent, and she's like, what the hell, you have a rich dad? I didn't even know that your dad was rich. Like, what is happening? So she goes in there. He mistakes her for somebody else because he owns a sex club. So he's like, get on your knees. Like the minute that she meets him, he's like, get on your knees. I don't know why you're standing. And that was their first meeting. And then she explains who she is eventually. And he's like embarrassed and like, oh my God, how much money do you need? Yeah, here you go. Then she's super curious curious as to what's going on. Like, what is this club? What does he do? Why does his son hate him? She's very curious about the whole thing. He ends up asking her to work for him as a secretary. So then we have boss employee trope as well. And it ends up becoming a little bit more when she shows her interest in the club that he owns and shows interest in him as well. This one surprised me in the way that it turned out to be a little more deep than I was expecting. That's what she said. No, but this one really did have more depth than I was thinking. And also the groveling. The groveling was really good and also hot in this book. So I rated this one 4.5 stars. Next we have The Never King by Nikki St. Clair. This is a reverse harem book, and it is also a Peter Pan retelling that has fantasy elements. Nobody told me that, and I was not expecting so many fantasy elements in a dark romance reverse harem book. So beware of that, but it was pretty fun. I gave it 3.5 or 4 stars. It was lacking in some character development and plot development, and towards the end I did feel like it was rushed and that the decisions the characters made didn't really make sense, and they needed a little bit more scenes to have that be believable in my opinion. But I know the next one did come out, and I think the third one's coming out really soon, so I do want to explore the rest of the series and see if it gets better. But it was really fun. It didn't have as much smut as I was expecting either, but it did have some really good scenes and I just enjoyed it. So those are the books that I've read recently. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!